So my initial starting point is almost always the same thing. It's just sitting down with the play, trying to figure out what the play says to me, what I think it might say to an audience, and then I will usually, before rehearsal start, I will try and set up a meeting with the director, and we'll talk about some of the things I got from the play, some of the things they've got from the play, and then we might take a look at the stage design. We might talk about some of the things that have been inspiring them when they've been reading the play, and particularly music. And then we might talk about how we might approach some of the musical ideas they've had, some of the sound ideas they've had, and how we might begin incorporating those into the text. So the jumping off point when talking with Rebecca Frecknall, the director of the play, was she spoke about some of her inspiration. And she had been watching Lars von Trier's Melancholia, which starts with this slow motion sequence of slightly surreal images which relate to some of the later themes in the film, set to the prelude to Tristan and Isolde from Wagner's opera. It's kind of a series of slow motion images which all unfold, which kind of relate to the film and kind of work around a lot of the film's themes. So Frex was quite keen to incorporate not only an operatic feel to some of the music and sound in the play, but also the slow motion movement. I mean, a particular example of that is the end of the play where a lot of the characters die on stage in slow motion. So we began to talk about what bits of music we might be able to use for this, and she was quite keen to use a piece of opera, but much earlier opera, much closer to the time in which the play was written, and she'd settled upon, well, it's more famously known as Dido's Lament from Purcell's opera Dido and Aeneas. So that was kind of our jumping off point. From there, I then sort of took that piece away and started playing around with it and manipulating it on my computer. And also other bits of the opera, I took various themes on and sort of interwove them to make the sound world of the play. So my approach on this play is much the same as it is on most plays I work on. I tend to do a lot of sitting in rehearsals and watching the director make the play with the actors and seeing if I draw any inspiration from that, and then taking that inspiration away and making a lot of material, whether that's sound or music, on my own. I then go back into rehearsals and I'll be listening to that music, often on headphones, whilst they're making the play, so that when the time comes for the director and the actors to listen to that material, I've got a rough idea of what I might want to use and where. It's then largely a process of kind of trial and error, trying out some of that stuff, seeing if it works. If it doesn't work, what else can we use? And then if I need to go away and make even more stuff, then we go away and try that. And that process largely continues throughout the rehearsal period, through the technical rehearsals, through the dress rehearsal, right up until the press night, which is where my job ends. So the stage design and the lighting don't actually represent what we would call a literal space, i.e., say a scene in the play's text is happening outside, the set doesn't really do anything to indicate that. So the sound of the show doesn't do this either. So what literal sound design would be, say we were in the street, we would hear, I don't know, the sound of carriages passing, the sound of church bells outside, that sort of thing. Whereas in this play, we're not trying to do that with the sound. We're trying to more evoke thoughts and feelings and kind of dramatic tension within the play. So the sound is what we would call non-literal or symbolic, as it were. So it probably supports it in a couple of ways. One, there's quite a lot of what we call underscore in the show. So that is where we use music, sound and sound textures underneath the dialogue in order to heighten or highlight various things within the text. And another way is in between the scenes, there are often big gaps in time. So in those gaps, a lot of things happen dramatically which don't necessarily get represented on stage. So the music and the movement of the actors goes some way to trying to plug those gaps, as it were. A good example of this would be what we call the banishment sequence, which is where the Duchess and her ward Antonio get banished from the court. This isn't actually mentioned in the version of the script that we're using, but the director, Rebecca, created a movement sequence which showed this, and the music underpins this. It's quite sort of frenetic and wild in quality, which shows the dramatic nature of that scene.